during the offertory. This will help us stay connected beyond today's service. After worship, we invite everyone to join us for coffee and conversation in the Sims room located at the back of the sanctuary. This is an opportunity for us to connect and deepen our sense of community. Now let us open our hearts and minds to the spirit of worship.
This is a people that gathers in faith, not faith in one spirituality or one God or any one way. We gather in faith of the power of diversity, the power of love, and the hope of a world transformed by our care. We gather in faith in ourselves and those around us, not a faith that requires perfection or rightness in one another, rather a faith that in our shared imperfection we may learn to stumble and fall together. Faith that we will help one another to rise and try again and again. May our gathering strengthen this life-giving faith. Come, let us worship together.
Now I invite Larkin Gardinier forward to light our chalice. Out of the darkness, light. Out of the light, warmth. Out of the warmth, joy. Out of the joy, togetherness. May this flame hold us for the time we are here with one another. Please rise in body or in spirit to join in singing hymn number 100 in the Grace Gray Hymnal.
I now invite all those who are young and young at heart to come on up to the front. Good morning, everyone. So I have a easy question to start off with. Who can tell me what this is an image of? Yes, it is an image of a tree. But then we have a slightly harder question. Can anybody recognize where this image of a tree is from? Yes. Downstairs in Metcalf Hall. Good answer. That is right. And I just want to acknowledge, I hope folks can see on the screen and also at home, there's a banner over this tree that says Unitarian Universalism. And I don't know the history behind the painting of this tree or why a tree is associated with Unitarian Universalism. So today's thoughts are kind of my theory as to what this might be about. So there is a piece of ancient wisdom about parts of trees, and I want to thank Hannah for helping us out. Here I have a twig that I took close to my house in New Hampshire. And Hannah, can you try to break this twig? Good job. How hard was it?
It was not that hard.
Not that hard at all. But what happens if we get a whole bunch of twigs together? Can you give it a shot? It's nothing is happening. There is bark falling off, but the pieces of the tree, the twigs, are sticking together because they're bound together. So when I first look at this image, to me, I see a tree. But I also see leaves and twigs and branches and bark and the trunk and the roots, the parts of the tree. And all of those parts together make the tree strong. And do you know that when trees are growing close to each other, they are more likely to survive in a storm than one lone tree? Because they can kind of shield and protect each other. I think Zara said it best, they are stronger together than they are alone. And that's true for people too. We, as a group, are stronger together than we are alone. We are like the bundle of these twigs. And when we are with similar trees, we are stronger together. And perhaps that is one reason why Unitarian Universalism is at the top of that tree, reminding us of the power that we find in each other. So with that, I invite our folks in the pews to sing you to the religious education activities. We now come to the centering time in our service, settling in body and spirit, first through words and then through ritual, kindling of the light, a time to light a candle of personal joy, sorrow, or concern, either here at the candle table or at home. At that time, if you would like a candle brought to you, please raise your hand. After we kindle the light, we'll be together for a time of shared silence, out of which we'll sing hymn number 34 in the gray hymnal, Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire. Let us begin with these words by Julian Jamaica Soto. They write, "To be free, you must embrace the breadth of your own existence without apology, even if they try to take it from you. You must know not that you can do whatever you want. You are not a kudzu vine eating entire hillsides for the purpose of feeding your own lush life. You must know instead that inside your entire universes, milky blue, magenta, and gold, expanding. But to actually be free, you must know and you must fight for the entire universes inside of everyone else. Being free is not a license, but a promise. And let us now kindle the light.
This morning's reading is taken from Jason Stanley's book, How Fascism Works, The Politics of Us and Them. Stanley writes, fascist politicians justify their ideas by breaking down a common sense of history in creating a mythic past to support their vision for the present. They rewrite the population's shared understanding of reality by twisting the language of ideals through propaganda and promoting anti-intellectualism, attacking universities and educational systems that might challenge their ideas. Eventually, with these techniques, fascist politics creates a state of unreality in which conspiracy theories and fake news replace reasoned debate. As the common understanding of reality crumbles, fascist politics makes room for dangerous and false beliefs to take root. First, fascist ideology seeks to naturalize group differences, thereby giving the appearance of natural scientific support for the hierarchy of human worth. When social rankings and divisions solidify, fear fills in for understanding between groups. Any progress for a minority group stokes feelings of victimhood among the dominant population. Law and order politics has mass appeal, casting us as lawful citizens and them, by contrast, as lawless criminals, whose behavior poses an existential threat to the manhood of the nation. Sexual anxiety is also typical of fascist politics, as the patriarchal hierarchy is threatened by growing gender equity. As the fear of them grows, we come to represent everything virtuous.
Thank you, choir. Every now and then, something happens in popular culture that transcends the barrage of perpetual stimulation and draws not only our attention, but our souls. Something like this happened recently. I became aware of this experience when I saw friend after friend post on Facebook that the duet of Tracy Chapman and Luke Combs singing Fast Car as part of the Grammy Awards moved them to tears and moved them to watch it again and again. I eventually became curious and searched online for the recording. It was a beautiful rendition of Chapman's song, a song I appreciated when it first came out 35 years ago. Only this version had a richer sound with the inclusion of violin and more twang, which I assume was Coombs' country influence. I too found myself watching it on repeat. With the curiosity of an anthropologist, I also began reading the comments below the posted video. As we know, online comments are often a cesspool of human interaction. But these comments were more like spiritual testimony. It was like time stood still, wrote one person. Many spoke of the song making them cry, whether it was from nostalgia, blaring this song when they were teenagers on their cassette deck in their own fast cars, or how much their own life resonated with the story of the song, a story of feeling trapped, of being homeless, of always hoping for better at each new small plateau of security, and amid the struggle and the longing, finding release, driving around with their lover in their fast car. But for me, and for other posters and commentators, the performance is powerful because of its context. This was simply a performance of a song at an annual music awards ceremony, but it was a performance by a Black queer woman in her late 50s and a white male country star in his mid-30s. Unless they are both great musicians and phenomenal actors, they sang together in a way that communicated artistic unity and mutual respect. In this cultural moment, when people of color and queer people are facing renewed hostility on many fronts, this public performance of this duet seemed like science fiction. Perhaps that's why so many of us were reduced to tears by the sight of it, a vision of something we didn't realize we sorely needed. As one post put it, this musical partnership suggested something from the song itself. Maybe together we can get somewhere. Any place is better. For most of my ministry here at the Winchester Unitarian Society, I've found it necessary to regularly acknowledge from the pulpit how hard it is to be human right now. I recall my sermon right after Donald Trump's election, an election that was, for me, a surprise. That sermon was equal parts pastoral message and rant. As the saying goes, the preacher preaches what they most need to hear. On that Sunday, and on this Sunday, I needed to hear that this electoral surprise wasn't the end of the story, and that we had resources, including each other, to take the next right step, whatever that may be. Almost 8 years later, it is still hard to be human right now. While Trump's election was a surprise to me, those who lived through the rise of fascist leadership in other nations found the campaign and its conclusion familiar. And somehow, despite being voted out of office and an unsuccessful insurrection and multiple criminal charges, we are again likely approaching a presidential race with Trump as a candidate. To be clear, the concern is not so much Trump as a candidate, as I do not endorse any candidates from the pulpit or any party, but my concern is with any candidate who engages in fascist politics. The word fascist is often heard as hyperbolic, an overly harsh accusation towards someone or something that we dislike. But again, in the spirit of clarity, fascism functions in predictable patterns and with familiar qualities. I use this term in a somewhat clinical way and not merely as a critique or insult. There have been enough fascist regimes in world history to be studied and thus to be understood. One of the authors who informs today's reflection, Timothy Snyder, names in his book On Tyranny that our Constitution was written by those who knew tyranny too well, the authority of kings, and sought to create something different, immune to such exacting power. The writer who offers me an understanding of fascism is Jason Stanley, author of How Fascism Works, The Politics of Us and Them, which was the source of this morning's reading. Stanley is a child of Holocaust survivors. His mother served in the resistance movement in Germany, posing as a German social worker to liberate Jews from unsafe situations. Perhaps one of the most notable aspects of her story is her recollection that as she sounded the alarm within the Jewish community, few took her warning seriously. I understand Stanley's academic work as a similar attempt to raise awareness. Stanley's work is complex, but many of his ideas are captured in this morning's reading. I've asked Ivan to assist me in reading this passage again, this time with references to current developments, including and beyond Trump's words and actions. Fascist politicians justify their ideas by breaking down a common sense of history and creating a mythic past to support their vision for the present.
Make America great again.
They rewrite the population's shared understanding of reality by twisting the language of ideals through propaganda and promoting anti-intellectualism, attacking universities and educational systems that might challenge their ideas.
Since September 2020, a total of 244 local, state, and federal government entities across the United States have introduced 783 anti-critical race theory bills, resolutions, executive orders, opinion letters, statements, and other measures.
Eventually, with these techniques, fascist politics create a state of unreality in which conspiracy theories and fake news replace reasoned debate.
Taylor Swift is plotting to help Biden win re-election through her appearance at the Super Bowl.
First, fascist ideology seeks to naturalize group difference, thereby giving the appearance of natural scientific support for a hierarchy of human worth.
We know they come from prisons. We know they come from mental institutions. We know they are terrorists. It is a very sad thing for our country. It's poisoning the blood of our country.
When social rankings and divisions solidify, fear fills in for understanding between groups. Any progress for minority groups stokes feelings of victimhood among the dominant population. We could go on, but I think we've heard enough for now. I first learned of Jason Stanley through a lecture by my colleague, the Reverend Cecilia Kingman. If you attended this past summer's service about General Assembly, you heard part of her speech. Kingman's lecture and Stanley's research inspired me to learn more about effective responses to fascist politics, or how resistance works. Colleagues also introduced me to the work of Timothy Snyder, author of On Tyranny. If Stanley is one to diagnose fascist politics, Snyder is one to prescribe what is needed to heal. Like Stanley, Snyder's work is hard to reduce to a summary, and some of his suggestions seem self-evident, such as be wary of a one-party state and paramilitaries, and defend institutions. But I appreciate some of Snyder's suggestions that remind us that as we as individuals and small groups have opportunities within our grasp to make our nation less vulnerable to fascist politics. Again, I thank Ivan for assisting me in sharing some of Snyder's ideas. Do not obey in advance.
Most of the power of authoritarianism is freely given. In times like these, individuals think ahead about what a more repressive government will want and then offer themselves without being asked. A citizen who adapts in this way is teaching power what it can do.
Make eye contact and small talk.
This is not just polite. It's part of being a citizen and a responsible member of society. It is also a way to stay in touch with your surroundings, break down social barriers, and understand whom you should and should not trust. If we enter a culture of denunciation, you will want to know the psychological landscape of your daily life.
Be calm when the unthinkable arrives.
Modern tyranny is terror management. When the terrorist attack comes, remember that authoritarians exploit such events in order to consolidate power. Do not fall for it.
Those who recommended On Tyranny described it as somewhat of a devotional manual for preserving democracy. If you are interested in exploring this resource further as a congregation, let me know. While Stanley and Snyder offer us profound civic wisdom, they are not spiritual leaders. So I'm grateful for one of the insights Cecilia Kingman named in her lecture. Those of us who are socialized as white are taught early on that in order to belong, we must name other groups of people as other. This counters our natural affinity with other human beings, and along with causing more suffering for those racialized in other ways, damages our own integrity. As the tactics of institutionalized racism and fascism are similar, seeking to divide people along lines of identity and denigrating some identities over others, the spiritual task of resistance is to somehow reclaim these natural interpersonal connections with strangers, to experience in an authentic way the shared worth and dignity among all human beings. This means also finding ways to connect with those who support fascist ideology. In the end, we know that fascism serves very few very wealthy people. As no one is poisoning the blood of our country, no one is deplorable. How do we bridge this profound cultural divide in our everyday lives, in our families, in our communities, and beyond? I now yield some of my time to another colleague, Dr. Reverend Elizabeth Stevens, minister of the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Palouse in Moscow, Idaho. Stevens was one of the respondents to Cecilia Kingman's lecture on fascism. Reverend Stevens describes herself as someone serving behind enemy lines. While that also sounds hyperbolic, she explains that in the past decade, in her state, many political offices have been won by right-wing extremists. One state senator ran on a platform of trying abortion providers and those who receive abortion care for murder, thus making them eligible for the death penalty. Lawmakers passed policies restricting gender-affirming care for young people and cut funding for anti-bullying programming. Faculty at Idaho universities received notification that discussing abortion or birth control could render them vulnerable to legal action. Health clinics are closing, and healthcare providers and families with transgender children are leaving the state for safety. I appreciate how Stevens names the extent of the challenges she and others face in her community and their spiritual solutions born of these struggles. Let's hear her in her own words.
Now, in my little town, we are home to a dominionist cult. They believe that they can take over. This is a racist, patriarchal, theocratic cult. They terrorized our city council over the mask mandates. They're currently hanging flags celebrating the overturn of Roe v. Wade in a deliberate campaign to counteract the rainbow flags that are flying in honor of Pride. Every protest that I've attended, there have been counter-protesters, sometimes carrying assault weapons. After I led the Women's March in 2017, a white truck followed me from the church to my house and from my house to church for weeks. In this bleak context, the congregation I serve is flourishing. And it is more than flourishing. My beautiful, wonderful folks continually amaze and humble me with their generosity, their grace, and their commitment. Sophia, I don't know if we could call them obnoxious, but I know that everybody on the Palouse knows who the Unitarian Universalists are. Everybody knows what we stand for. Now, I actually think that part of our success is really can be attributed to the time that we don't have time or energy for fake fights. The real ones we are in have high stakes, and we understand that. We talk a lot about how we can leverage our privilege. We understand that having a community that will support us when our values lead us to acts deemed criminal by the fascists is itself a privilege. And yes, I said when, not if. And those cult members, they are our neighbors, and those of us who can safely do so keep trying to build bridges, because it's hard to hate people you know. People who brought you casseroles after you had surgery, people who shoveled your sidewalk the last time it snowed. Guided by the nourishing words of Black women like Adrienne Marie Brown, Tricia Hersey, Octavia Butler, and Alexis Pauline Gumbs, we have come to understand and really embody the deep truths that rest is resistance, joy is resistance, and living well is resistance. So don't let me leave out the part of the story where Moscow has an amazing live music scene, an incredible farmers market. We're surrounded by beautiful hiking trails and scenic rivers, and most days, I say at least once, at least in my evening prayers, how grateful I am for my sweet, sweet life. I'm reminded of an insight that I brought home from a pilgrimage to Transylvania that I went on with Cecilia, that under a fascist regime, one of the most important tactics of resistance is to keep local culture alive and thriving. The sweetness of our lives grounds us and resources us for the acts of courage when they are required. In other words, behind enemy lines, resistance can look like committing felonies, but it can also look like cutting your neighbor's lawn, and it can look like simply living a full and joyful life. It looks like balancing fierce compassion for others with fierce self-compassion. It looks like choosing in any given moment to embrace the power of love rather than yielding to fear. We Unitarian Universalists of the Palouse, along with our friends in Boise, the Twin Falls, Pocatello, Coeur d'Alene, and Idaho Falls, we are keeping the faith behind enemy lines, along with other UUs who are living in radicalized states. We need you with us. Share with us your strength and your courage. Let us know we are not alone. Thank you.
As Tracy Chapman and Luke Combs sang recently, we've got to make a decision. In the song Fast Car, relief is found through speedy escape, but it's taken a long time for our political systems to arrive where we are. In an interview, Jason Stanley names the formation of the Ku Klux Klan and the Nixon administration as milestones moving us in this direction. No matter how I wish we could quickly undo the assaults on our democracy, the consensus is that it will be saved by committed and vigilant groups and individuals upholding the practice of democracy and refusing to assimilate to fascist ideology and demands, with no room to rest or become complacent in this work. We all want to feel like we belong. We all want to feel like we can be somebody. Fascism tells some people that they are better than others, but in actuality degrades humanity as a whole. And the possibilities for solidarity are enormous. Too many people are living the story of Fast Car, struggling to get by and get ahead. Maybe together they will get somewhere. Together is the only way we will get anywhere I want to live.
The purpose of our church is to inspire everyone to become more generous in spirit and action. Our annual pledges help us fund our programs, pay our staff and leaders, and maintain our beautiful buildings. Passing the plate during worship is a way for us to express gratitude for our blessings and celebrate the abundance in our lives. It's a cherished part of our weekly gathering. This morning, we share our gifts with the American Civil Liberties Union. In their words, the ACLU dares to create a more perfect union beyond one person, party, or side. Our mission is to realize this promise of the United States Constitution for all and expand the reach of its guarantees. Here are the different ways you can donate. Those in the sanctuary may give cash checks or donate electronically. Text to the number in your order of service or visit our website under the giving page. If you're visiting for the first time, either in person or online, you are our guest. In-person attendees can find a physical visitor card in the pew rack in front of you. Please complete and put it in the collection plate. Information about how to give online and how to complete the virtual visitor card will soon be shared with live stream attendees through text on your screen. The offering will now be generously given and gratefully received. Those who wish to do so are invited to join in the unison affirmation. We gather not for ourselves alone, but to use our common power to build a beloved community within and beyond these walls. We create and reaffirm this covenant this day to make justice flourish, to practice compassion amidst difference, and to embody transformative love. Please rise in body or in spirit in singing hymn number 108 in the gray hymnal.
Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. Go in peace. Amen.
Join me in reciting the words printed in the order of service for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. This service has ended, but our life of service continues. Let's continue the conversation in the Sims room at the back of the sanctuary.